Good morning. Thank you all for joining me here today. I'm glad to have all of you a part. Jim, Pam, Michael. Again, welcome to today's presentation. When you think of financial goals, what comes to mind? Is it buying a new house? Purchasing a new vehicle? Maybe it's even boosting your savings or thinking about retirement. These goals, while different, have commonality. One, they're achievable. Two, is that they all require money. Obviously, right? But how do you get money? You have to have an effective personal budgeting strategy. Hi, my name's Tyler Wood, and by the end of today's presentation, you're going to be able to create, develop, and manage your own effective personal budgeting strategy. Let's get started. The first thing that you're going to want to do, take a look in front of you. I've provided you two things. One is an easy to use Excel spreadsheet to be able to figure out your budget. The other thing is an evaluation form for today's presentation, which I'll get back to you towards the end of today's presentation. Following that, the first thing that we're going to actually talk about is calculating what's called your after-tax income or net income. Think of it as your pay statement. When you look at it, the amount that you're taking home, that take-home pay, that's called net income. And so what I mean by net income is your income that you're taking home after deductions, expenses, taxes. So think of like medical, vision, dental insurance. Think about 401k contributions or any type of other retirement contribution, as well as any type of flexible spending account, health savings account, etc. The list could go on and on depending on what your company offers to you and what you take advantage of. So when you look at that take-home pay, that's going to be the number that you work on, that you're able to do things with during the month. And so using that as a initial guide is going to help us understand how much we can spend per month. The other thing you want to think about is talents and hobbies you may have. When it comes to income, obviously everybody wants more, but there are other ways you can also get more income or use your talents and hobbies to supplement that income by doing different types of gigs or other jobs. But again, we'll circle back to that when we're actually creating the budget. The next thing that you want to do is you want to track your spending. Now this is very general up front because you think, oh, well, I spend too much at Starbucks. Well, I maybe buy too much groceries or think with my stomach when I go shopping. Well, it's a little bit more in detail with that. So the first thing you want to do is actually look at what's called fixed expenses. Fixed expenses are expenses that cannot be changed, and they are fixed and they stay the same in cost every single month. So for example, fixed expenses would be mortgage or rent. It could be any type of car insurance, cell phone. As long as those numbers do not change, then it's called a fixed expense. Those are going to be easier to come about because you know what they're going to be every month. The next thing is called a variable expense. So variable meaning that it can change or fluctuate. Variable expenses change throughout the month, and some examples or common examples of those would be things like electric, gas. It could be cable if you have different packages or add-ons. Any type of expense that regularly change but is recurring every month is a variable expense. The last thing is going to be recording your daily spending. Now this is crucial because you want to have all the raw data to be able to understand what type of daily spending habits that you may have. And daily spending could be, today, tomorrow, the next day, etc. But it could be every other day. You just want to find commonality between your spending habits so that way you can understand and break it down what exactly you're spending on. And it's going to make sense here shortly. The best way to be able to pull all of these expenses, especially the daily spending, is looking at data from a bank statement. If you utilize your credit card to pay a lot of those expenses, they're great too for providing a statement of what you spend it on. You just need something to be able to track that. Otherwise, you're going in blindly and you probably don't have a really good budgeting strategy yet. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set your goals. So to break that down a little bit more, you have two things, what's called short-term goals and long-term goals. A short-term goal is something no more than a year. So what you want to accomplish financially within that year. For example, that could be going on vacation. That could be reducing credit card debt. It could be anything really within that short of a year. Moving forward past that is long-term goals. Long-term goals are anything past a year, and it doesn't really have any established time frame on how long it could take. Long-term goals could be a year to 2 years. It could be 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. Everybody's goals, though, are going to be different. But that's great because we're all going to have the ability to create an effective personal budgeting strategy tailored for us specifically based on our data, our spending habits, and goals. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make that plan. So the plan is going to be crucial because you want to take the data used from the fixed expenses, understand what cannot be changed. So again, mortgage, unless you were to refinance or take an alternative approach, that's not going to be changed. Then you're going to look at your variable expenses. And then based off of that, it's really hard to say what next month is going to be. But if you go back far enough, you're going to be able to approximate what your future expenses be like. So for an example, in the months of November through February, given that Kentucky actually has an actual winter, I know that my electric bill is going to be higher because I'm going to need heat in the house. So I can work that into my budget. Well, I need X amount of dollars for the fall, but I know once November, December comes around, I'm going to have to account for a little bit more in my variable cost budget for my utilities. The other thing that you're going to want to do is break down those expenses. So a combination of your daily spending habits along with your variable expenses, you're going to need to know what's the difference between needs and wants. So needs, it's pretty plain and simple. A need is something that you have to have. It's living expenses. You need to have this. A want is something that you would like to have, but it doesn't necessarily going to make or break you. A good example of a need would be internet. It actually can go both ways. So internet costs. Internet, I need to have that at home for school and work. My want, though, do I really need the amount of data that's available to me or the speed fastest to me? Maybe not. Where can I cut those expenses? So thinking of it like that, again, going back to my initial example, do I really need to go to Starbucks every Tuesday or every other day? And it's expensive. Starbucks is expensive. So once we have all that data, we're going to work on adjusting our habits. This is going to be really important because it comes with a lot of discipline, but a lot of excitement at the same time because we're going to be holding on to our goals, sticking to them, and then as time goes by, we're going to watch those funnel. So first, you're going to review your data and establish where those adjustments need to be made. So again, going back to my example, do I really need that Starbucks every other day? Probably not. That's what, $3 to $4? So we can cut that out. And then after that, you're going to calculate the money you're going to be saving by doing this. One thing that you need to keep in mind, the money that you're saving, yes, it may be small at first. $3 is not a whole lot. But when you calculate it, going back, how much I've spent over the last 2 to 3 months or even 6 months, $3 every other day, it adds up. Think about it on the opposite side though. $3 to $4 for 6 months every other day. How much are you going to have in your savings? How much towards debt are you going to be able to put? How much towards retirement or to something else are you going to be able to have just doing that small of a change? It adds up. So stay disciplined and really hold on to your goal in saving that money. The other thing that you want to do is, or what you can do is adjusting fixed expenses. Now that's going to be a little bit more difficult because, as I mentioned with the example about the mortgage, you can change the amount or the cost of a fixed expense, but it's going to come at a very high discipline rate, and two, may not necessarily be necessary or something that you can take advantage of. So that's something that you can do if you're really wanting to maximize your full saving and budgeting strategy, but that's going to be a little bit more tedious. The next thing or the last thing you want to do is check in and evaluate. Now this is really important because, great, we've established our plan, we've made adjustments, we're going to start taking advantage of that this month or next month. However, the only thing that is constant besides fixed expenses is change. So you need to evaluate to make sure that you still have an effective strategy and we're staying on task. I know myself, I can get off task quite a bit. That's why you have to evaluate and check in with yourself and with your bank statements to make sure that you're following it, and make sure to really hone in on those savings. But as long as you evaluate, because things are going to change again, like I mentioned, you're going to have maybe a raise at work. Maybe your expenses, the costs are going to change. They may increase, they may decrease. But again, you want to make sure that you're staying on track and making sure as you complete those goals, you're making adjustments accordingly to funnel your next goal. You just need to understand everybody's going to have different budgets, different goals, different styles. It doesn't mean that budgets aren't necessary, but I do encourage each one of you to explore different budgeting techniques and methods. Mine that I mentioned today may not be the best fit for you, but that's the joy of having the tools and resources, taking it and run with it, and then creating something that's tailored specifically for you. The goal today, or my goal, is to help you reach your financial goals. So in conclusion, does anybody have any other amples or any other examples that they may have used that have worked, maybe haven't mentioned, that I haven't mentioned today, and have those been successful? There are multiple steps on how to create an effective budget, but following these steps will guide you on how to start, develop, and manage that budget. To help my presentation, again, the content and material and effectiveness, I've given you that evaluation form. Please fill it out so that way I can evaluate my process with helping others, helping you, and helping myself create a healthy financial change. Thanks for your time today. Have a great day.